Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a really critical piece of literary cartography, I think. We're exploring a chapter that sometimes gets overlooked in terms of its seismic thematic importance.
Yeah,
The Black Gate is closed.
that's right.
This chapter, Book 4, Chapter 3 of The Two Towers, it really represents the moment the whole grand quest of the ring bearer just hits a solid wall, like a physical and psychological wall.
It really does. And it's a phenomenal source of tension and insight. I mean, on the surface, the action seems simple enough, right? They arrive, they look, they realize, okay, this objective is impossible, and then they pivot.
Yeah.
But our deep dive mission today is really to move past that surface action. We want to extract the profound emotional and, well, strategic knowledge that's hidden in this confrontation.
Right.
We're focusing really intensely on that strange, fragile, three-person alliance, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. And that devastating moment, they truly internalize the scale of Sauron's power. And of course, the single fateful decision that irrevocably sets the trajectory for the rest of Middle-earth's fate.
We've been talking a lot about epic scope, grand battles,
Yeah.
Helm's Deep and all that. But here, the narrative scale just violently contracts. It shrinks right down.
It really does.
This is where, nobility meets cold, hard logistics, where the ideal of the hero's brave charge kind of just dies a quiet death.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at the intense psychology of despair, the constant draining negotiation between, trust and necessary betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment a supremely determined hobbit finally has to accept the physical limits of his and their reality.
We tracked their harrowing journey through the dead marshes, remember? And now they've arrived at what should be the final staging point. They're right on the doorstep of the Dark Lord.
Yeah, the finish line, almost.
Yeah. Almost. The stakes just couldn't be higher, yet the means of addressing those stakes are, well, microscopic. There's no army left, no wizard, no powerful weapon to aid them.
Nothing.
There's only this tiny group and an utterly impossible task.
Okay, let's unpack this. What happens, psychologically and strategically, when pure, stubborn determination slams into an impenetrable, unmovable reality built of iron and stone? Let's start by forcing ourselves to stand right there, shivering before the Morannon.
Okay, so the first thing any serious analysis of this chapter really notes is the immense narrative discipline Tolkien employs here. Think about the dramatic shift.
Is huge.
Yeah, just chapters ago, we were immersed in the chaos and triumph of Helm's Deep, right? Following kings, wizards, legendary heroes, and sweeping cavalry charges, siege warfare.
All that epic stuff.
All that epic stuff. Now, Tolkien wrenches the narrative completely away from those grand movements. He fixes our full, unblinking attention entirely on the smallest fellowship, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum.
And that shift, it isn't just arbitrary, is it? It feels like a thematic statement. That contrast, it maximizes the feeling of isolation.
Totally.
I mean, the earlier fellowship had Aragorn, the strength of Kings Legolas, the vision of the elves, Gimli, the endurance of the dwarves, Gandalf, the wisdom of the Astari. They were a collective of strength.
Right.
This trio, though, they operate on pure vulnerability. Their mission depends entirely not on, their sword arms or their ability to fight, but on their ability to go utterly unseen, unheard.
Yeah, precisely. It transitions the quest from what was, a high adventure, albeit a really dangerous one, to an act of intensely isolated espionage. The weight of the world, quite literally, is placed upon the shoulders of two weary hobbits and, well, a creature fundamentally corrupted by the very thing they seek to destroy.
Wow.
Their isolation is the magnifying glass for the near impossible nature of their task. They are deep behind enemy lines, far removed from any possible aid, operating under conditions of just constant physical and psychological exhaustion.
But I wonder, does that extreme isolation, while obviously terrifying for them, is it also strategically necessary for the narrative?
How do you mean?
Well, if they had stumbled into the Morannon while still part of the Grand Fellowship, the stakes wouldn't feel quite so high, would they? By removing all those buffers, the elves, the men, the wizards, Tolkien, forces us, the reader, to confront the purity of the Hobbit's mission. They are the definition of an internal resistance, really, succeeding only by operating beneath the notice of the great powers.
That's a really key distinction. They didn't choose to be resistance fighters, not in the usual sense. They're simply fulfilling a duty that requires complete anonymity.
Right.
And their isolation reinforces a crucial theme in Tolkien, doesn't it? That the great affairs of the world often turn upon the actions of the small and unregarded.
Yeah.
The great powers are focused on the gates of Minas Tirith, the plains of Rohan. They're completely overlooking the slow, agonizing trudge of two hobbits across the desolate lands of the enemy.
And what an enemy they face. Let's talk about the physical manifestation of that enemy's power. The Morannon, the Black Gate itself. The source analysis really emphasizes that Tolkien goes beyond just describing a building. He engineers an experience of profound, overwhelming evil. It feels designed specifically to crush hope.
It really is architectural dread realized in physical form. We're told of vast walls of stone, which immediately speaks to a scale that just dwarfs the small figures of Frodo and Sam.
Right, makes them feel tiny.
These aren't hasty battlefield defenses. These are monumental structures. They're built to convey permanence, the absolute certainty of Sauron's seemingly eternal dominance. It's an assertion of power that goes back millennia.
It's like a visual declaration. We're here to stay. But it's not just the scale that crushes you, is it? It's the details. The details turn the architecture into a weapon.
Absolutely. The structures are designed for psychological warfare. The towers, for instance, they're described as bristling with spears and armor.
Bristling.
Yeah. That word bristling, it suggests not only defenses, but an aggressive, agitated readiness. You don't just see a wall, you see the instruments of death ready to spring at a moment's notice. And of course, there's the ever-present threat of legions of orcs ready to guard it. It is a structure that is actively populated by menace.
It sounds less like a gate and more like a vast, unmoving machine dedicated purely to deterrence and, well, death. The sheer volume of stone, the relentless presence of iron, the visual clutter of spears and armor, its architecture engineered to scream impossibility.
The source material mentions that this setting evokes a heavy, choking sense that evil has built something impenetrable. That phrase, choking sense, is vital. It's a sensory detail. For the hobbits, the air itself must feel oppressive, tasting of dust and stale iron. Think of it less like a castle gate and more like standing before, I don't know, a Maginot Line maybe. If the Maginot Line was sentient and actively hostile, it is the moment the full monolithic scope of the enemy's material power truly hits home for them. The despair is physical before it's even emotional.
That distinction, physical despair, that's really compelling. For you, the listener, this reinforces that the danger isn't just about getting caught. It's about the overwhelming knowledge that even if they could somehow pass, the very nature of the enemy's stronghold is designed to break their will first.
And that's the ultimate function of the Morannon, isn't it? It doesn't just block entry. It tells anyone approaching, regardless of their courage or determination, you are too late. You are too small. You are utterly irrelevant to the forces arrayed against you. It's a message that penetrates even Frodo's armor of nobility. #tag General 1.3 Frodo's resolve meets reality.
So in the shadow of that seemingly impenetrable wall, we witness this crucial moment for Frodo's character. His initial reaction is immediate, and it's purely driven by his immense sense of duty. The analysis highlights he's ever determined and noble, insisting with his desperate stubbornness that this must be the way in.
Yeah, and it's a classic heroic impulse, isn't it? Frodo carries the ring, an object that demands its own destruction, and he sees the destination Mount Doom somewhere beyond that gate.
Right.
So, to a person burdened by duty and this intense moral obligation, the logical, though maybe suicidal, conclusion is to walk through the front door. Face the danger head-on because no alternative exists in his current framework.
But if we look closer, isn't there an element of the ring's influence distorting his judgment here? We know the ring loves despair, loves domination. Would a truly rational, unburdened Frodo look at that gate and still insist on a frontal approach?
That is a very, very perceptive question. The ring certainly clouds his ability to strategize clearly at this point. It exaggerates his sense of urgency, focuses his attention only on the most direct, aggressive path, which is a path guaranteed to end in his death and the ring's return to Sauron. His courage and duty are amplified by the ring, turning them into a potentially fatal flaw in this moment. He's battling not just the exterior enemy, the gate, the orcs, but the internal pressure demanding some kind of grand, visible, and ultimately fatal confrontation.
So his courage and his powerful sense of duty, they collide head-on with the absolute physical, unyielding limits of reality. Bravery, in the classic sense of charging forward, is revealed to be utterly useless here.
It's the ultimate reality check, and that's why this chapter is so important to the quest's overall strategy. Courage can sustain you across the dead marshes, sure. It can help you stand up to a single watcher or a small skirmish. But it cannot evaporate solid stone, nor can it make thousands of watchful orcs suddenly cease their vigilance. This moment forces Frodo to confront the painful truth that his mission requires survival, not martyrdom. He has to understand that duty requires him to live long enough to fulfill the task, not die instantly attempting some kind of suicide run.
And for you listening, this is a profound lesson, isn't it? That the greatest courage is often the patience to endure and the humility to accept that your original plan, however noble it seemed, is utterly incompatible with the forces arrayed against you. It's the moment the quest shifts from open heroism to covert endurance.
And that necessity for strategic patience is something Frodo has to learn rapidly, because the decision they face next will determine whether they even live to see the next sunset.
Okay, so the impossibility of the Morannon forces this really dynamic shift in the trio's interaction. The gate is so terrifying that it actually wrenches an unexpected practical intervention from the least trustworthy member of the entire party, Gollum.
Gollum's function here is just one of the most brilliant narrative devices in the Two Powers, I think. His contribution is purely selfish, it's rooted in primal fear, yet it produces this moment of undeniable life-saving practical truth.
Right.
He's described in the sources as writhing in fear, which is such a powerful image. It underscores his terror of the physical presence of the gate, and more importantly, the explicit organized power of Sauron that it represents.
He's a creature of the dark, isn't he?
Yeah.
And the Morannon is the ultimate organization of power, a structure designed to detect and crush small, sneaky things exactly like him. His fear is almost like a litmus test for the danger.
Exactly. His fear is proportional to the certainty of destruction. And out of that terror comes genuine practical counsel. He begs them not to go that way. He warns them with absolute certainty that the gate is watched day and night and that sneaking through is fundamentally impossible.
Wow.
It is a terrifying moment of clarity delivered by a creature who usually traffics only in shadows and deceit.
What's fascinating here is the paradoxical nature of the truth.
What?
Gollum's counsel is accurate, not because he's suddenly morally reformed or anything.
No, not at all.
But because his terror is actually a more reliable predictor of danger than Frodo's noble resolve in this instance.
Yeah.
He knows the system of Mordor intimately. He knows that only suicide awaits them at the Morannon.
His knowledge stems entirely from necessity. He is the ultimate survivor, isn't he? Having spent centuries navigating danger. He understands Sauron's security protocols better than any free person could possibly guess. He knows that Sauron would never leave the main highway unguarded, particularly after, attempts by other forces to enter Mordor over the years. Gollum's truthfulness here is validated by his deep existential need to survive and avoid detection, not by any lingering moral component. Hashtag 2.2, Sam's initial distrust versus practicality.
But this immediate self-serving clarity from Gollum runs directly into the most dependable psychological obstacle in the party, Samwise Gamgee.
Ah, Sam.
The source analysis notes that Sam immediately defaults to suspicion. He thinks Gollum is just being cowardly, or maybe worse, setting some kind of trap.
This is where the internal tension of the alliance becomes almost unbearable, doesn't it? Sam's deep protective love for Frodo means he processes the world in highly suspicious terms. Anyone who counsels retreat, caution, or an alternative path when the main objective is right there in sight must, in Sam's mind, be tempting sabotage.
Yeah, for Sam, loyalty is everything. His vision is somewhat binary. You're either with them entirely or you're a threat trying to lead Frodo astray.
Exactly.
And Gollum, being neither friend nor straightforward enemy, but this essential, morally ambiguous guide, he exists in this infuriating gray area that Sam just cannot tolerate. How does he reconcile his absolute loyalty to Frodo with the fact that the only creature he distrusts implicitly is the only one providing accurate, life-saving intelligence?
Well, he struggles mightily. His first impulse is just to reject Gollum's advice because the source is tainted. He views it as a simple challenge to Frodo's authority and determination.
Right.
And this resistance actually serves a narrative purpose. It prevents Frodo from accepting the path too easily. It forces the hobbits to require external, undeniable proof of the Morannon's impossibility.
Yeah.
If they had simply taken Gollum's word for it, the narrative tension would kind of collapse, wouldn't it? And the reliance on him would feel too easy, too convenient.
That's a good point. The fact that Sam's resistance is rooted in devotion, not malice, makes the conflict even more painful. He's trying to protect Frodo from what he perceives as a moral weakness or a physical trap, but in reality, he's arguing for the certain death of his master.
And that conflict highlights the fundamental difference between the two hobbits' burdens. Frodo carries the moral burden of mercy and the physical burden of the ring. Sam carries the protective burden of loyalty, which sometimes requires him to be, strategically obtuse.
Oh, yeah.
Sam needs something external, loud, and absolutely undeniable to override the voice of his loyalty and admit that the enemy they hate is just for this moment, right?
And that external, undeniable proof arrives in one of the most stark, chilling passages of the chapter. Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources describe the arrival and passing of the host of Easterlings.
Ah, yes, the Easterlings. They are Tolkien's literary sledgehammer here, removing all ambiguity. If Frodo's noble impulse and Sam's loyal suspicion were the only points of debate against Gollum's, sniveling fear, the decision would remain subjective.
Right, they could argue about it.
They could, but the Easterlings provide objective, overwhelming, state-sponsored proof that the Gate is actively functioning as a major military nexus.
They watch a full military mobilization, a massive, coordinated column marching straight into Mordor, and the sources really emphasize the detailed imagery used to convey this might. It's not just men, it's dragons, banners, grums, and all.
Let's just dwell on those details for a second because they are crucial to the psychological impact. The banners and the sound of the drums, they don't just signal military movement, they signal ceremony and official sanctioned entry.
Oh, interesting.
This isn't clandestine traffic, this is a state procession of allies indicating the gate is open, functioning, and expecting traffic. And the dragons on the banners. That's a powerful symbolic detail. It speaks to the vastness of Sauron's dominion, pulling forces from faraway lands, symbolizing an imperial continental scale of power that Frodo and Sam, these two small figures, cannot possibly hope to oppose.
The sound of those drums, the rhythm of thousands of feet marching. It must have completely shattered any remaining desperate hope they might have had that they could simply sneak past during a lull in vigilance.
It makes the realization, as the source describes it, horribly clear. Their entry is impossible. It's a moment of physical defeat that actually forces a strategic victory, in a way.
How so?
Because the quest hits a hard, insurmountable stop sign. There is no sneaking past a military convoy of that magnitude, no brave charge, no chance of exploiting a momentary lapse in vigilance. They are just spectators to the very power they must evade. For you, the listener, this passage highlights that the scope of the enemy's resources far, far exceeds anything the hobbits have ever encountered before.
So this scene makes the reader and the hobbits understand that the quest is no longer about heroic confrontation at all. It's about strategic evasion. The brave frontal approach is officially dead. Hashtag tag 2.4, the necessary shift in strategy.
Exactly. The initial strategy direct navigation essentially is invalidated by the sheer reality of Sauron's military might. The source synthesizes this beautifully. Success hinges now on endurance, patience, and the humility to accept help from the unlikeliest of allies.
Humility, that's key.
Humility is paramount here. Frodo must humble himself enough to accept that his noble, aggressive intentions are useless, and that his continued survival depends entirely on the intelligence provided by a creature he is morally obligated to keep alive, but cannot trust for an instant.
This represents the total inversion of the classic epic quest, doesn't it? Victory relies on hiding, not seeking glory. It confirms the anti-epic nature of the ring quest. While Aragorn is off fighting battles for glory and land, Frodo wins by finding Sauron's blind spot.
And that blind spot exists precisely because Sauron, despite his immense power, operates primarily on military logic and domination. He builds massive walls, he guards the main entrances, he completely discounts the possibility that anything small, pathetic, and fearful like Gollum, or like two hobbits, could possibly bypass his grand, visible defenses. Sauron is blind to the power of the meek.
So the reliance on Gollum, this creature of shadow, is cemented as an absolute necessity now. The terrifying proof of the Easterlings means that even Sam, probably gritting his teeth the whole time, has to concede that in this singular instance, Gollum's treacherous cunning is the only asset they possess that might bypass the overwhelming, visible strength of the enemy.
They are forced to utilize the Shadow World to fight the power of the Dark Lord. They have to find an unseen path, a path outside of Sauron's militaristic worldview, even if that path is fraught with the kind of supernatural, ancient peril that only creatures like Gollum truly understand.
Okay, so once the impossibility of the Black Gate is just slammed home, the narrative pivots entirely on Gollum's counteroffer. It's presented as a major twist, characterizing Gollum's proposal as one of his few lucid and almost trustworthy moments.
It's almost trustworthy, yeah.
It is trustworthy, I suppose, because it aligns perfectly with his self-preservation instinct, right? He wants to avoid those drums and banners just as much as the hobbits do.
It is the moment Gollum stops being purely a burden and transforms into an indispensable, albeit highly dangerous guide. The proposal for the alternative path isn't some cheerful offer of help. It's delivered out of sheer desperation and, a desperate desire to continue hoarding his precious somewhere safe eventually.
So what are the specifics of this alternative path that Gollum proposes? He describes another way into Mordor, a little path that goes up the stairs. It sounds immediately less dangerous in terms of detection, maybe, but far more treacherous physically.
It's definitely a trade-off. They're trading the certainty of immediate military destruction at the gate for the uncertainty of hidden, creeping peril on this other path. The path itself is dangerous, secret, and explicitly stated to be filled with shadows.
Ominous.
Very. This signals a profound change in environment. They're moving from the wide-open, scorched plains of military domination to the claustrophobic, treacherous darkness of a forgotten ancient pass. The secrecy is what provides the hope. It suggests the path operates outside of Sauron's standard observable military logistics.
And crucially, Gollum is brutally honest about the risks, isn't he?
Yeah.
Stating that it is their only chance. In that single phrase, all the earlier conflicts just vanish. It becomes a matter of life and death, not debate.
And this choice, this little path, it's the key to understanding Sauron's overconfidence, perhaps. Why wouldn't the Dark Lord guard this path?
Yeah, why wouldn't he?
Because he operates on such a grand scale, armies, fortresses, great roads, that the idea of anyone attempting to use a treacherous, ancient, barely used goat track, known only to creatures of shadow like Gollum, is just beneath his notice. Sauron's inability to think small is the primary weakness that Gollum is, maybe unintentionally, exploiting here.
So for the hobbits, the decision means embracing an immediate physical hardship, climbing those stairs, whatever they are, to escape the overwhelming certainty of their doom at the gate. Hashtag tag 3.2, Frodo's burden of mercy and the fateful choice.
So Frodo agrees. He agrees to follow Gollum, and this is highlighted, rightly so, as one of the most fateful decisions in the entire series. Why does this decision carry such catastrophic weight beyond just choosing a different road?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this decision is the true point of no return, isn't it? It's not just a navigational decision. It's the final commitment to a path dictated by moral principles that Frodo established earlier. By accepting the little path, Frodo is essentially signing up for the horrors of Cirith Ungol, the confrontation with Shelob, and the ultimate near-fatal test of his physical and spiritual endurance in the chapters that follow.
Exactly. Think about the alternatives for a moment. Had they turned back at the Black Gate and maybe searched for a safer, albeit much longer, path far to the north, the entire latter half of the story is completely rewritten.
Completely different book.
Right. This choice, dictated by Gollum, is the direct vector to the perils that will nearly kill Frodo, break the Fellowship apart, and lead to the final necessary intervention of fate at Mount Doom. Frodo's choice here confirms that his quest requires him to engage with the hidden, primeval evil of Middle-earth, not just the organized political evil represented by Sauron's armies.
But this decision has roots far deeper than just panic at the gate, doesn't it? It circles right back to Frodo's earlier decision near the Emyn Muil, remember, when he chose to spare Gollum's life.
Yes.
He showed mercy when Sam clearly wanted to kill him. And now that very act of mercy has provided the creature with the crucial, secret geographical knowledge they now desperately need to proceed.
That is the central poetic brilliance of this whole arc. The path to Mount Doom requires not just the physical destruction of the ring, but the ethical preservation of the very creature needed to guide the ring-bearer to the final stage. The decision at the gate proves that Frodo's compassion wasn't a weakness, it was actually a strategic necessity. His moral integrity provided the key to bypass the impossible physical barrier.
That's a powerful message for you listening. That an act of kindness or mercy, often perceived as naive or weak, can actually unlock future opportunities when all conventional strengths has completely failed. Hashtag tag 3.3 Gollum is a test of character.
So, the acceptance of this path means that the alliance, as uneasy as it is now solidified until the very end. Gollum isn't just a guide anymore, he's a test of Frodo's mercy and Sam's loyalty.
The psychological complexity of this ongoing moral triangulation is just immense. For Frodo, sustaining Gollum is this continuous, agonizing test of his compassion. He has to protect his guide, even when the ring is constantly whispering doubts about that creature, and even when Gollum's very presence is just a drain on his already depleted emotional reserves.
And that compassion comes at a significant cost, doesn't it? Frodo is expending valuable spiritual energy just managing Gollum, energy he desperately needs to resist the ring. He's protecting this fragile, necessary evil, and that burden is unique to him. He's constantly measuring the threat of Gollum against the absolute necessity of Gollum.
And then on the flip side, Sam's experience is equally draining, but for totally different reasons. For Sam, Gollum is a continuous living affront to his protective loyalty towards Frodo. Sam wants desperately to eliminate the threat, to save his master from the source of his anxiety, but Frodo's unwavering mercy forbids it. So Sam has to sublimate his deepest protective instincts for the sake of the quest, which he knows, deep down, is dependent on this wretched creature.
The source calls this an uneasy alliance, and that understatement captures the core tension perfectly. Their journey from here on out is built entirely on necessity, paranoia, and Frodo's profound, agonizing moral commitment. Every step they take up those stairs is a step deeper into this moral conundrum. It's a dynamic where the guide is plotting treachery, the master's practicing mercy, and the servant is perpetually watching and waiting.
It truly showcases the difference in their forms of love, doesn't it? Frodo's love is this detached, almost universal compassion for the broken creature. Sam's love is fierce, protective, and exclusive to Frodo. It's a spectacular conflict of ethics versus practicality playing out every single moment.
Okay, let's pull back now and ask the essential question. So what does this all mean for the big picture themes of the entire work? What statement is this chapter really making?
Well, the chapter is a quiet, but I think immensely powerful statement on the nature of ultimate victory in Tolkien's cosmos. It confirms that the ring's destruction depends fundamentally on secrecy, compassion, and paths unseen. This is the anti-epic confirmed right here.
It is the anti-epic because it demonstrates that the strategy of the Free Peoples must be based on the very qualities Sauron utterly dismisses. Sauron builds strength, armies, impenetrable walls. He relies on brute force and visible domination.
Right, the obvious stuff.
The obvious stuff. The success of the quest, however, relies on evasion, the hidden heart, the small effort, and the capacity for pity. Victory will not come through brute strength or open gates or glorious military charges, the very things represented and guarded by the Morannon.
It completely flips the script on traditional military conquest narratives. The great military powers, Sauron, Saruman, even well-meaning Gondor, they're focused on the front lines and the major gates. They overlook the possibility of the little path taken by the smallest fellowship. The entire success of the quest hinges on the fact that Sauron does not account for two tiny hobbits, guided by a pathetic, desperate creature.
And this is a deep philosophical point for Tolkien, I believe. The greatest triumphs against absolute evil are achieved through the persistent endurance of the meek, navigating systems that are too vast and arrogant to notice them. It's the triumph of the invisible, compassionate strategy over the visible, military strategy. It's a celebration of quiet persistence over loud, visible power.
And for you listening, this is a reminder that sometimes the bravest choice isn't running toward the danger you are expected to face, but having the humility and the strategic foresight to change your plan entirely and find a route that leverages your opponent's blind spots.
Yeah.
Hashtag Tech 3.5 vanishing into the wilderness.
As the chapter closes, the physical action concludes with really profound symbolic weight. Frodo and Sam turn away from the massive, mighty walls of the Morannon, and they just vanish back into the wilderness.
That turning away is huge. It's the physical sign that the front door is locked and impossible, and that the back door, filled with shadows and extreme uncertainty, is now their only focus. It's a transition from the world of geopolitical conflict back to the world of ancient, moral, and physical peril.
And this transition is critical for the reader's understanding of the escalating tension. They've survived the confrontation with the Morannon, which represents immediate military death, but they are now fully committed to a path of prolonged psychological and physical attrition. This raises an important question.
Which is?
Recognizing that finding this secret path is only the beginning of a larger nightmare. They have successfully bypassed the physical military obstacle, only to walk directly into the realm of ancient supernatural evil, the very dangers the Morannon was designed to withstand, not bypass.
Oh, right.
The immediate sense of relief at finding a way is quickly tempered by the knowledge of the dangers the hidden path promises. They avoided the orcs only to walk straight into the web of Shelob.
It's the ultimate confirmation that the quest is far from over, and that their greatest enemy may not wear armor or carry a sword, but may instead rely on patience and webs.
The chapter is a testament to the idea that sometimes the only way forward is the route your enemy least expects you to take, even if it is the most terrifying for you personally. It forces us to appreciate Frodo's complex leadership here, shifting from the traditional hero to a strategist of patience and endurance, relying on that strange moral alliance he forged with Gollum.
It's the moment the fate of Middle-earth becomes inextricably tied to the decisions of one exhausted hobbit and his conscience, relying on the map held in the tormented mind of a broken creature.
And that inescapable necessity brings us to our final thought for you to mull over. The path they chose, that little path leading to Cirith Ungol, was established here as their only possible way forward, given the impossible obstacle of the Black Gate. We know Frodo made a moral choice earlier to spare Gollum, which led to the knowledge of this path.
Right.
But given the overwhelming, immediate, and undeniable might of Sauron displayed by those Easterlings marching through the gate, was this fateful choice truly an exercise of Frodo's free will and mercy? Or was it simply an inevitability dictated by the scale of the world, leaving them with no actual alternative?
Something to think about as you navigate your own complicated paths and maybe face your own impossible walls. Did they choose the path, or did the world choose it for them? We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the limits of bravery and the power of unseen paths. We will catch you next time.